I
I'm
had
always
another experience. I come from web development, like PHP, MySQL, and other stuff, and my clients see that, and sometimes they offer me some work similar to that, like websites and backends. But I tell them that I quit my job because I liked game development much more, and I will be. I don't want to go back to that area, and I will be more efficient if if I were doing only games. So that's usually what I tell them.
So
About what Corona doesn't can't handle, I talk about Corona Enterprise, if they can afford it, if they can use it, and if it's applicable, and if I'm good enough at Objective-C to implement it. Usually it's something like making a plugin for something. So that's okay. But if it's something complicated like building user interface with custom stuff and other stuff, I say no, you have to find somebody else for this task.
what do you guys feel about sourcing others? So Sergey, you just mentioned that you can do web development, but it's not your preference. So, but you still have a skill set there that you could leverage by managing the project for someone else. So if someone else is the resource, and then you're just the project manager. Have you guys ever done any of that? How does the panel feel about kind of outsourcing the work to someone else and then just becoming the project manager?
in my particular case, because I have so many students that are learning mobile app development and are interested in becoming professional developers, I regularly bring on interns or student assistants to help me with projects, and I feel like that's part of their vacation or their education. But I also make it very clear that it's usually done over their vacation, so it's part of their education. I also make it very clear to any clients that I have that I am using students and to help with the development of the app. But in the final stages, it's my name that goes on the development. So I do closely look over everything that is developed.
Yeah, and that's an important point, is to be able to back it up. You know, at the end of the day, if your resource doesn't come through, you could still step in and do the work yourself. But Ed, what were you going to say?
I was gonna give Brian a bad time.
Well, and I do ask Ed regularly questions on if I get stuck on something. I will not hesitate to ask members on the panel to, hey, how are you dealing with this problem? And Ed's great about responding pretty quick.
Charles, are you talking about hiding behind other developers? So like you're getting a client and you say, hey, it's me alone, but instead you're giving work to somebody else. Talking about that?
Yeah, basically. I don't know how to call it hiding behind other developers, but yeah, you're outsourcing the work to other developers. So you are the studio, you're like the studio, you're the whatever, and then you
for me, I think it's quite hard to find a good developer and for a good rate. So it would be like profitable and reasonable. And another thing, I don't like to be responsible for others' work. So usually, if I see somebody else's work, I usually find something that I don't like about it, and I don't like that feeling. But managing other people is okay. So if a client already has other developers working on, I can take over and control them. It's not a big issue.
Yeah. Well, I do take on web development projects, and when there's a design element to it or whatever, I'm not a designer, and so I will then send that off to someone, and they'll do the work, and then I'll get it back, and then it'll be my job or somebody else's job, depending on how the project goes, to implement that. So somebody told me a long time ago that you never say no. You either raise your rates or you outsource it to somebody else, but you just never say no.
Yeah, that's actually. That saying no before you've actually heard it out or you've explored your options is kind of like folding in poker before the bet's been raised. It's like just because you don't like your cards, you don't have to fold right away. You can stay in for the first round at least, the blind. I find it's the same way, and I do think that there is a challenge when you're outsourcing to other people because you're still responsible. It's everything's going through you, and so at the end of the day, you're responsible for other people's work. And if for some reason that doesn't go down or that doesn't work out very well for you, you'll have to own up to that, right? Like that was your responsibility. So I think it's very important just to have people you trust or people you've worked with before. And if you don't know anybody, maybe try on small projects, like try to collaborate on something smaller as opposed to bigger.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You should never you should never jump right into it, and do small projects. Give even the virtual assistant or the developer, whoever that you're working with, you give them small tasks so that you can build a relationship with them, and then trust ultimately. So good advice.
I think part of being a successful developer is that you do need to be part of a community. Here on Corona Geek, we're constantly bouncing ideas and concepts off of each other to make our apps better. It's the steel sharpening steel metaphor that we're going for becoming exceptional in what we do. And you'll hear the conversation quite often that Ed will give Sergey a hard time about giving comments back on his code and back and forth that, hey, that you completely rewrote what I've done, and I've sent things that I was struggling with to Ed and other people on the panel, and they've gone, no, let's do it this way, and it was a better concept than what I had and dramatically improved my code. It's a good thing to have a community that you're part of, even if you're an independent developer.
Well, let's talk about some war stories here real quick before we run out of time. So, have you ever had a client drop you, or you have? Well, let's start off with. Have you ever had to drop a client, and how did you handle it?
Yes.
Yeah, Ed. Yes. And how did you handle it?
Really, okay, I'll just start. I've had to drop one client. I had a client that dallied on a project for so long that Corona had transitioned from graphics 1 to 2, and the tools we relied upon were dead. How did I handle it?
Issue. Yeah.
As best I could. Honestly, I still feel terrible really badly about the whole thing. But at the end of the day, I just had to explain that we are beyond the point where we can continue to do development this way. We either have to start over or give up. Sergey, anybody?
I had one case in my early days of developing. It was one of my first clients. I've got a job, but it was unexpectedly complex. So I got it for a little amount of money to be developed, a fixed amount of money. But later on, development goes on. It's going to be more complicated and more complicated, and I cannot work on it anymore for this amount of money. So we ended up transferring all my work to some other studio in India, and they are either still working on it or it's done. I'm not sure.
Let me ask you a specific question about that. When you decided that you were going to do the transfer, was there a period where you said, hey, I've got to do this transfer, but I still want you to pay me to do the work to prep it? There must have been some prep work to do that transfer. Did you
it was
on that, or?
It was no extra charge.
Okay, so you took that out of your fees already.
The client paid what we agreed on initially, and that was it. Okay. So I didn't give money back, and I didn't charge anymore.
Okay.
Was just to maybe clarify the question? I don't know if that really answered what Ed was after, but the time that you spent transitioning out of the project, was that sort of included in the payments you like in what they had contracted you, or was that something that once your contract ended and once you guys ended the contract, then you spent that time to help them?
No, it's different. So we had a project going on, but it turns out to be much complicated than I thought initially, and that it was described initially. And the money were for the entire project to be made by myself, but it didn't turn out to be so, and we decided to transfer. Is it clear?
Mm-hmm. And was that time that you spent transferring, was that your own time or paid time, or?
It was fixed price, so it wasn't our rate. So it was only one-time payment from initial state.
Okay.
And the transfer, when you did you end up having to spend more time discussing with the folks you transferred to, or did you just say, hey, here it is?
Yeah, I had a Skype call for about an hour explaining the code to the people there.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward then.